Well, hello folks, this is Chris again. One thing I want to apologize for is the echoiness of my voice. As you'll notice, I'm not using a lapel mic this time, and that's because the sound quality of this is not really going to be that important, because I don't think without running special mics and so on and so forth that the tone is going to be accurately reflected in what I'm going to do. I'm going to describe it to you instead, because 1,000 words in this case is worth a picture. I'm going to go ahead and try something, explain what I've found, and then you'll have to make your own decisions about whether or not to believe me. The lapel mic wouldn't make much difference in terms of listening to the actual sound of the drums. That's why I'm going to just explain this rather than go into great detail and with mics and EQs and all that sort of thing. Because what I'm going to do today is try something. Online, you should never believe anything you see on Facebook, but online, on Facebook, I saw this advertisement for Deadheads, D-E-D-H-E-D-S. And apparently they're supposed to be a little bit deader than standard heads to give the drums that more mellow sort of sound without the overtones, kind of like the 60s and 70s sound. As you know, my North drums have been using the tone rings. These are Aquarian studio rings, they're called. And one of the reasons my channel has over 1 million views is because I mentioned I use these on my toms for my sonar kit and my sewer pipe kit and my small jazz kit and this kit. And apparently it's like a religion. Either you love these things or you hate them. And there was big debates about it. But I do like the way it helps get rid of some of the overtones. Now with North drums especially, they're already kind of dry, but the problem with North drums is the bearing edges on North drums, at least on these, are terrible. They're like the Grand Canyon. They're not smooth. And I don't know how effective it would be to try to sand them, or there's probably people that do that with fiberglass drums and can redo them, but I don't know if there's anywhere close to where I live in University Place here in the Pacific Northwest that does that kind of thing, or what it would cost. But I thought perhaps these Deadheads might work well on the North drums, so I thought I'd give them a try. Even though the fidelity is not going to be very good, you actually could go to one of my previous videos and hear the North drums with a little bit better miking, I think. But even though the mic's not very good right now, just to give you an idea of the 16-inch floor tom without the studio ring sounds like this. Actually, turn off the snare drum, sorry about that. And if you put the studio ring on it, not a huge difference. It's very subtle, but it's a little bit different. It just kind of tightens it up a little. Here's the 14 without it. And so, kind of gives it a little bit of a warmer tone, as I say. And I'm anxious to see if the Deadheads are going to help overcome the crummy bearing edges on these, and if in fact they're going to sound as good or better than these Remo Diplomat heads. These are actually the fiber skin variety. So we'll try the Deadheads and kind of see how they compare. If they sound better, I'll probably switch over to the Deadheads. But if not, I'll leave it the way it is now, because the Deadheads are kind of expensive. I've got my trusty quick removal tool for the lug bolts. I'll get back to you once I get the heads mounted and tuned, so stand by. Okay, so I'm halfway there. I've switched the head on the 16-inch, and it's naturally going to be dead because it's tuned so low. And what I found, and again, you're not going to be able to really tell this from this silly built-in microphone in the phone, but the Deadhead basically sounds kind of like a standard head with the ring on it. And if you add the ring to the Deadhead, of course, it's even deader. But what's interesting is, and again, this might be because the 14 is a little higher and automatically has a little more resonance than the super low 16-inch does, but I think that the 14-inch with the ring still has a little more tone, a little more resonance than the Deadhead without any ring at all. Let me show you what I mean. And again, I hope you can make some sense out of what you're going to be hearing. So this is the, and by the way, the large 16-inch with this Deadhead or with the ring as I had it before reminds me of the tom at the beginning of a Boston song. I think it was on their second or third album. And the floor tom comes in like this. But it sounds kind of like that, if not even deader. It's really funny. It's a super huge sound, but it's completely dead. And I never really actually liked that tone. I thought it sounded like kind of like a cardboard box, actually. But here's what these sound like. So this is the 14-inch with the ring, and the Deadhead with no ring. So the Deadhead kind of does what they say it's going to do, which is sound like a drumhead with a ring, without the ring. Now, if I add the ring to the Deadhead, not a lot of difference. It's dead either way. A tiny bit deader with the ring, but it just doesn't make that much difference. Take the ring off. So you can, I'll kind of do it as I play. Watch. So there you go. Now, taking the ring off of the 14, you can hear the difference considerably. So it does get rid of some of the overtone noise and floppiness that the open head has. But it's pretty muffled. Now I'll do the 14 and we'll see what they sound like combined. Okay, so now I have the Deadheads on the 14 and the 16. These, of course, the 12-inch here are tuned differently, but they're both 12 inches. They have the studio rings on them as well, and they're on this Diplomat fiber skin head situation that these used to be. So same kind of thing. These sound like the heads with the rings on them, but the rings aren't on them. So here's what the Deadheads sound like, tuned very low. And if you play with the rings on the higher toms, they sound pretty similar. Take the rings off the 12s. Flappier, a little more overtony compared to the Deadheads. Put the rings back on the 12-inch, and you got that lack of overtones again. And I suppose if you put the rings on the floor toms, no tone. Kind of like that Boston song. So of course, if you're using the Deadheads, you would not use the studio rings, in my humble opinion. And even that, those are pretty dead. With the tone rings have a little more tone, yet they don't have the overtone, so I almost prefer this. The Deadheads, if I tune these a little higher, it might make a difference. Here's the overall sound of all the toms. So you can hear obviously tuned approximately to different notes. So just for fun, I'm going to try tuning the floor tones higher, see if the higher tone will sound better with the Deadheads. Again, the bearing edges on these are pretty horrible. You can tell because if you have 8 lugs and one of them is completely loose, and yet that part of the head has a higher pitch than one of the other lugs, which is tighter, you know there's a problem. But let me try tightening a little bit and we'll hear how that sounds. Okay, after about an hour of trying to get these things tuned, again, it's challenging when the bearing edge is rough. And these, of course, are larger drums than the 12, so obviously it's going to be a little bit of an unfair comparison, but it is interesting to hear the difference. These are all unmuffled. So they're approximately the same tune. That these again have the overtones because there's no rings on them, as opposed to the Deadheads. Now, if I put the 12-inch rings back on the higher toms, as if I can manage to do this without dropping everything on the floor, we have a similar sound again, with the rings on the 12s and the Deadheads without any rings. When they're tight like that, the Deadheads are even deader. Again, probably because of the bearing edge problems. If we put the rings back on the Deadheads, of course, then you might as well be hitting cardboard boxes. Very dead, so. Sound that awful. It would be probably good in a studio because the sound guy would have total control. He could add reverb, whatever he wants. So, if you have a dead bass drum, all over again, but that is pretty dead. Take the rings off, and once again, it's interesting, these fiber skin heads with the rings have a little more resonance and sound a little more melodic than the Deadheads. When the Deadheads are tuned that high. But when the Deadheads are tuned lower, at least on these North drums, which are dry anyway, they actually sound better when they're a little bit looser. The lack of hassle with the rings falling off while you're playing and transporting them and everything might make it worth buying Deadheads for the whole kit, although I don't use the rings on any of the higher toms, just these lower ones. So it'll be interesting to see if I switch to the Deadheads on the higher toms, what those do. But the jury's kind of out, I guess, is what I would say. These are okay if you don't want to mess with the rings for your lower toms. But if you're going to have them tuned higher, at least on drums with crappy bearing edges, you're better off just using regular heads in the rings. On a really good high quality drum, with the good bearing edge, I think the Deadheads would probably work pretty well. They'd probably give you that ring dead kind of sound if that's what you're after. I may order some more. I may try on some of the other drums and see what they're like. I might mount these on some better quality drums to find out what they sound like on a nice bearing edge drum. And if I do, I'll put it on a video and you can watch that too. And again, apologize for the terrible sound. Someday maybe I'll hook up a mixer and do this right. But this is just to give you some ideas of my opinions. So thanks for watching.